Hi, I'm Cecile Lawrence and I'm running for U.S. Senate on the Green Party line, and I'm here with Gay Canough, who is the owner of this establishment, ETM Solar Works. Gay, tell us a little bit about your company.
Well, we've been in business for 22 years. We do design and installation of solar energy systems, both solar electricity and solar hot water heating. And we've been in Endicott for 20 years.
Wow, I didn't realize you were here. So tell us a little bit more about why solar energy is good, and is good for the economy and good for our for upstate New York. People say upstate New York has no sun.
Well, if you look at the 30-year database of solar irradiance, which was measured by the National Renewable Energy Lab, Binghamton gets 73% of the amount of sun that San Diego gets. Huh. And the leader in solar energy in the world is Germany. The sunniest place in Germany does not get as much sun as Binghamton.
Wow.
In fact, their irradiance is approximately the same as Juneau, Alaska, and yet they have over 8,000 megawatts of installed solar, serving over 1% of their electric need now, while the United States has less than 1,000.
Terrific. So I wanted to highlight this company for several reasons. One, because it promotes an alternative form of energy, solar energy, so that we do not need to be depending upon fossil fuel of any kind, whether it's gas, oil, or uranium. And also as a source of jobs, that we need more jobs that are focused on renewable resources, insulation, solar power, ground source heat pumps, small-scale wind farms. And I'm especially wanting to highlight this company because it's a woman-owned company, and has been in this area for quite some time, as Dr. Canough just told us. And we need these kinds of jobs in upstate New York. We need renewable kind of jobs, and there are jobs available. And what we also need in order to facilitate this is that the current subsidies, the federal subsidies on fossil fuels industries, on subsidies for oil companies, gas companies, nuclear installations, that those be removed and put towards developing companies like this, so that then we can have even more jobs and have that
subsidies.
That ideal, which is a possible ideal, is not a dream, of having as many buildings across New York State having solar power. I heard you once saying that if we had maybe a certain number of buildings in New York State being powered by solar energy, we could cover electricity needs of New York State.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, approximately 3% of New York State's land area is already covered by buildings and parking lots. If we were to cover less than a third of those with photovoltaics, such as this panel behind us here is solar electric panel. If we were to cover less than a third of those buildings and parking lots with those, we could actually power 100% of the state from solar energy for the electric need.
Wow, 100% of the state?
Yeah.
Just that. Tell me those figures again.
So that's essentially 3/4% of New York's land area covered with photovoltaics will cover the whole, will power the whole state. And New York is in need of distributed generation, where you put a lot of solar panels on buildings to send the power directly to the building. That eliminates transmission loss, and it also takes stress off the grid. Today, I know the last few days, Con Ed down by the city, they are very, very nervous because the load is very high and it's a strain on their grid. Mm-hmm. So, and why is the load high? Well, ironically, it's because of air conditioning load, because the sun is beating down on the rooftops. So if we were to cover those rooftops with photovoltaics, we could power that air conditioning load very easily. Mm. So,
terrific.
There's this myth that it takes a huge amount of area to do this, but it doesn't. That's not true.
Just takes a small amount of area, and you can take care of 100% of the electricity needs of all of New York State. Does that include New York City?
Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea.
Now New York City, Manhattan, it's hard to power Manhattan with the rooftops in Manhattan, but all the boroughs around Manhattan have lots of low buildings, so those are easy to serve. And some of that electricity could go into the city, onto the local grid there.
Yeah. Terrific. Thank you very much for sharing this information with us. And I hope that people will now understand that even though we're in Binghamton, that we can have solar here, and it can work here, and it can work in upstate New York, and we need to get the political will and the social will in order to make this work, because it can happen and it must happen. Thanks.
Why is the Green Party the only one talking about this? Why don't we hear anything from the Republicans or the Democrats? Or do we?
Well,
are they trying to get subsidies for businesses for solar power?
The problem is that the fossil fuel industry is very big and it's very established, and so much of the money that goes to supporting politicians comes from them. So we've had difficulty in Albany, for example, having opposition to incentives for solar, because many of the people there, the big money is coming from the fossil fuel industries. Of course, they have lobbyists pay millions of dollars a year, while the New York Solar Energy Industry Association, we have one lobbyist, we pay him like $2,500 a month. So where the fossil fuel guys, they're probably paying hundreds of thousands to their lobbyists every month. So it's really hard to overcome the sort of the establishment, because it's big money, really. I mean, that's what it boils down to, is because it's big money. Now, we are making headway. There have been bills passed, for example, that allow net metering, where if you generate extra solar electricity, you can sell the excess back to the utility and get the retail credit for it. We've got a sales tax exemption for solar systems. We've got a tax credit in New York State for solar systems, and we also have a federal tax credit for them as well. So we have made progress, and we're sort of in the mode of either we get our own subsidies or we try to get rid of the other guy's subsidies. Well, getting rid of the other guy's subsidies is really hard. It's really hard, and I mean, they've got a lot of subsidies going for them. The fossil fuel industry does. So it's a problem. So we've been trying to get some of our own incentives, and we like incentives versus open-ended subsidies. We like incentives that ramp down with time as the cost of solar power becomes cheaper, and the cost is becoming cheaper rapidly. Every time we double the production from factories of these solar panels, the cost goes down 20%. What's new is that the doubling time is now 1.5 years. So the cost is going down faster than we thought. We don't need fancy new technology. All we really need to do is do more of it, just like anything else. If we mass produce, it will be cheaper. The Public Service Commission is fond of doing cost-benefit analyses, and they're always trying to compare solar to other things. But we haven't deployed solar on anywhere near the scale of other things. The biggest solar power plant in the world is probably the one in Germany. It's 45 megawatts. I mean, a typical fossil fuel fire plant is somewhere between, usually it's a 300 megawatt or 300 to 700 megawatt size plant. So you can't really compare a little house size system to a power plant for cost. You have to deploy solar, and I'm convinced that if you do deploy solar, it will be just as cheap, if not cheaper, than fossil fuels, because of two things. Solar cells are made of silicon, the second most common element on Earth. And the solar resource is huge. We get 10,000 times more sun every year than the whole world energy use. And that's just the amount of sun sort of falling on the land area of the Earth. So it's inevitable. I mean, right now we're using ancient solar power in terms of the fossil fuels, which were plants and animals that died and turned into coal and oil and stuff. But why? We got all this energy falling on us all the time. In fact, if there's any extraterrestrials up there and they're going to go by planet Earth, they're looking down at us and they see we're drenched in all this energy falling on us. Why are they burning things down there?
Yeah.
Is there any intelligent life down there?
No.
And the likelihood of our having these alert days that we've had these past 2 days because of air pollution should go right down if we have the entire state, the entire nation covered with solar, the way that Dr. Canough was just explaining.
And it really does create jobs. The solar industry worldwide grew something like 6% last year, while many, many other industries shrunk due to the recession. So we continue to grow. This year it's roaring forth. We are now experiencing a little bit of delay in getting solar panels because the demand is huge and it's getting bigger by the day.